Hello, everyone. We are live from downtown San Francisco at Dreamforce, the place where the future happens, as Salesforce is saying this year. This is the 20th anniversary of Dreamforce, and it's also the biggest presence LinkedIn has ever had here, which happens to coincide with our launch yesterday of Deep Sales. My name is Alyssa Merwin Henderson, the Vice President of Sales for LinkedIn Sales Solutions, and I am delighted to be your host today. And what a show we have for you, because today we're going to solve all of your sales problems. Well, I'm kidding. But we are here to discuss something that is top of mind for sales leaders all over the world, and that's how to get reps to cut through the noise, to earn the right to engage, and to focus on impact and outcomes, not just action. By looking at what top performers are doing differently, LinkedIn research has uncovered what may be an uncomfortable truth for some sales teams, which is that when done right, less really is more. So with me to unpack this today is Matt Dixon, sales pioneer and author of the best-selling books, The Challenger Sale, and soon-to-be best-selling Jolt. And later in the show, we'll be joined by sales industry experts Marilee Bear from Zendesk and Greg Ernst from Intel. Together, we're going to shine a light on what top-performing salespeople and sales organizations are doing differently and share with you some actionable insights that you can take back to your own organizations. So, without further ado, I am super excited to talk with Matt Dixon. Matt, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful. Congratulations on Deep Sales. Very exciting.
Thank you. So, Matt, we have a tradition at LinkedIn. When we introduce someone, we always like to share a bit about something that we wouldn't know from your LinkedIn profile. So, could you share something that we wouldn't know by checking it out?
So this is tough because I feel like I live on LinkedIn, so there's a lot on my profile. I would say I thought about this a little bit. I'm an amateur endurance athlete, and I would put the emphasis on the amateur part. Very amateurish, I think. So.
Great. And in the amateur endurance athlete part, is it running? Is it?
Running, biking, I love trail running. So I've done some long races that have taken me a very long time. Okay. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for playing along.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about how the buying landscape is changing, and 10 years ago you came out with the Challenger book, which really revolutionized a lot of how we thought about the sales landscape. So I'd love to talk first about what are some of the trends and changes that you're seeing in the buying experience today?
Yeah, so I think there are three big ones. There's a lot going on, obviously, but I'd call out three big, kind of, if you will, secular trends happening in the world of sales. The first one is customers learning on their own. So in the Challenger research, we talked about this problem. We'll unpack it in a little bit more detail today, but it's this issue of customers engaging salespeople very late. We found in that research that the average customer is almost 60% of the way through the buying journey before they ever reach out, ask for a meeting, ask for a demo, fill out the form, call the salesperson, email the company, which puts salespeople in a really tough spot, right? They're forced then to compete on price. The customer's already made up their mind about what they need, about where you as a solution provider fit into their needs. They've already kind of benchmarked you against competitors. Big problem for salespeople to get boxed out and forced to compete on price, obviously. The second problem I would call out is consensus buying. So I think this is a big one. As we push to bring more innovative solutions to customers, to, as we'll talk about later, bring new ideas to our customers, the knock-on implication of that is that customers then want more people to weigh in on the purchase decision. So how do we go from one person to getting many people bought in? We actually wrote a second book called The Challenger Customer about this problem. What we found was the average customer had, this is, by the way, going back to like 2015, 6.8 members of the buying committee. Most customers I share this with say, the last complex purchase I was involved in had like 6.8 committees of 6.8 people each, right? So it's a game of herding cats, dogs, and bicycles and getting this often dysfunctional buying group to agree on doing something more than staying the course and sticking with the status quo. That's the second big change. The third one is the one that we're covering now. It's the one we talk about in the new book, The Jolt Effect, which is customer deals ending up in no decision. So we found in our research that anywhere between 40 to 60% of all deals, all opportunities in the average salesperson's pipeline end up lost to no decision. So the customer ghosts us, they go radio silent, they stop engaging with us, and we mark them as closed, lost in Salesforce, no decision, right? These are customers who will go through the entire buying journey, spending a lot of their own time, to say nothing of the salesperson's time, all the people on the seller side, your product experts, your executive sponsors, your customer success managers, taking up time from your reference clients, all, demos, proof of concept trials, and then to do nothing. So this is a problem we actually think is a big one. We've been tracking it for the past few years, and we think it's going to get a lot worse, actually.
And so
I'd hate to be a doomsday guy, but this is the landscape we're in.
Well, let's talk about that. I'm curious, of the three changes that you just outlined, what do you think that sales leaders may not be fully appreciating about what that means for their organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take the first one just as an example. So this idea of customers out there learning on their own, which we wrote about in the Challenger sale, I think what they don't fully then appreciate is that by the time the customer engages with you, they already know everything about your solution. They already know about your reference clients. They already know about your success stories, your proof points, the projected ROI of your solution. They might even know about how much they would have to pay for your solution, right? So it is pointless at that point to show up and throw up, talk all about your feeds and speeds, your features and benefits. That's what got you the meeting, right? And I think what sales leaders miss is that in that world, we need to do more, right? The bar has gone up. So that is I think, a big missed opportunity. Take no decision as another example. I think what sales leaders miss is that they all wring their hands about driving more leads, more demand gen. It's very important, obviously, but when 40 to 60% of the average sellers' deals are lost to no decision, that's your growth opportunity. Do something about that. Get those deals unstuck and get them to move forward in a new and different way. Okay.
So those are things that we need to be paying much more attention to.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk about Challenger for one more minute. So it was a book that really revolutionized, I think, how a lot of us thought about what success in sales took. We thought that relationship managers were really the profile that would get to great outcomes. Turns out, it's the person that can show up and really add value and bring a different perspective. So of the core Challenger tenets, what's still relevant today and what's maybe changed?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll just for anybody who's on the live stream today who are not familiar with that Challenger, just really quickly, what we found was that all salespeople fall into one of 5 statistically defined approaches. I won't go through all 5 of those now, but the big one you called out, the one that most sales leaders say, that's the rep I want, and really the one that represents the profile that most organizations have been trying to drive, the climate they're creating, the people they're trying to hire are these relationship builder salespeople. The relationship builder, and I don't mean to create a paper tiger argument here. I'm not talking about the 5 martini lunch, the luxury box at the sports game or the concert. That stuff happens in sales, we know. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the salesperson who frankly does what salespeople have been taught to do for decades now, which is to go in and find out what's keeping your customer up at night, right? Diagnose their needs, and then prescribe a solution that addresses their needs. Be reactive, be responsive. The customer asks you to jump, you ask how high. Like, this is what sales leaders have been trying to build in their sales organizations forever. What we found is that in a world where customers learn on their own, what they actually want is the thing they couldn't learn on their own, right? And the bar has gone up in terms of the value they expect from a salesperson. So today's salesperson, Challenger salespeople, are really good at not simply understanding what's keeping the customer up at night or diagnosing that, but are really focused on showing the customer what should be keeping them up at night, right? Bringing the new idea that ultimately leads to the solution. It's not free consulting, right? We're trying to sell stuff here. But it ultimately leads to the solution you're trying to deliver to the customer. This, I think, is a trend that has been going on, since, the internet has facilitated buyer learning. There's so much information out there for our buyers. This is a problem that is here to stay. It's funny because when we wrote the Challenger sale, we thought it was a story about selling in a downturn because you remember this. We did the research in 08, 09. The book came out in 2011. And what then occurred to us is it's not really a story about selling in a downturn. It's quite an effective strategy in a downturn. It's a story about selling to information-empowered customers. And what do we need to do as salespeople? The message here is not to stop building relationships, right? That's the last thing I would say. The message is you need to build a different kind of relationship, a relationship founded on business value, bringing new ideas to your customer about how to make money, save money, mitigate risk. And those things, and if you talk to customers and you ask them, because salespeople ask me a lot, do they want to be challenged? And I said, go ask your customers. And they will say, gosh, I wish my salespeople would bring those new ideas and push my thinking. What's the thing we don't know, right? What's the risk that's going to blindside us? What's the growth opportunity, the cost savings opportunity we're not even thinking about?
So I heard a great analogy yesterday, which was, you know, customers don't need us to be cheerleaders. They need us to be personal trainers sometimes.
That's right. Yeah, well said. We've that one I think is probably more work appropriate. I often say, stop being a bartender to your customer and start being a personal trainer. But spot on. Well said.
So let's talk about the Jolt Effect, because I think there are some amazing ideas there that feel really appropriate right now. So talk to us a little bit about some of the main tenets.
Yeah. So we and this is kind of a fun and interesting story. So because I'm a huge nerd, which you've known because you've known me for a long time, when the pandemic rolled around, March of 2020. And like everyone else was learning how to bake sourdough bread and watching Tiger King, which is what we were all doing. What we decided to do was like take advantage of this once in a lifetime research opportunity. Because remember, the world of sales, which was on a pace to become more virtual over time, right? More of our interactions were on Zoom and Teams and WebEx and all these virtual platforms, suddenly was 100% virtual. So we recruited dozens of companies. We harvested from those companies 2.5 million sales calls and studied them with machine learning. And what we were specifically looking at was, why do customers do nothing? Like, what would possess somebody to spend all of their time, to eat up all of the seller's time and the vendors, the team's time, to ultimately just go dark and do nothing? And what do the best salespeople do to avoid that? So here's what we found. I think that what has been taught to salespeople for a very long time now has been that when your customer starts to get cold feet, when they start to waffle and waver and backpedal and straddle the fence and hem and haw and wring their hands and all the other metaphors
just
that come up with.
Not respond to your emails.
That's right. When they start to go dark, there's only one reason that that's happening, is because you failed to beat their status quo, right? You haven't given them a compelling enough reason to change. And what we do is we tell salespeople in that moment, you dial up the FOMO, which I know I feel a little bit old using terms like that, but it's the fear of missing out, right? We're trying to dial up the FOMO. And how do we do that? Well, we try to appeal to the pain of same. We try to create that burning platform. Maybe we just dangle a 10% discount in front of them, right? We say, hey, we can implement your solution now, but if you wait, you're going to miss the window, and next time we can implement is like 6 months from now. So we try to dial up that fear of missing out. You know, here's the cost of your inaction. But what we found in the research is that's not the reason, or it's not the primary reason that customers wind up in no decision land, in this wasteland of no decision. The main reason is not that we failed to dial up the FOMO. The main reason is that we failed to dial down the FOMO. FOMO is the fear of messing up. And it turns out that when you weigh two different things, it's am I going to miss out on a 10% discount on the one hand, or am I going to lose my job? It turns out losing your job is a lot more important to your customer, right? They get deeply concerned, even after we've beaten their status quo and given them a compelling reason to change, they get deeply concerned about making mistakes. And we've got to, as salespeople, figure out what our customer's concerned about and then prescribe for them the way out of that, right? How do I instill the confidence that you're making a great decision? You picked the right configuration. The doors you closed, the things you took out of your shopping cart, that was very smart. You're headed down a great path. You've done plenty of research. You don't need to do more research. You're in great hands with me as a salesperson. I'm going to guide you to a great decision. And I've de-risked the solution. I've taken risk off the table, and I've helped you get to a place where you feel confident you're going to get the returns you expect from this. So that is the big premise, is the difference between FOMO and FOMO. More of no decision losses are because we didn't dial down the FOMO. It's not because we failed to dial up the FOMO. We're very good at that in sales.
Okay, so it's less about chasing down a decision. It's probably more we haven't met the threshold for them making it.
That's right. That's right. They feel like we found that indecision was a function of three specific things. The first one was, have I picked the right thing? So it may be that I want to do business with LinkedIn. I know that. But you guys offer a breadth of options, right? There are different ways to configure the platform. There are different bells and whistles, different integrations I could consider, different contract lengths, right? I could go enterprise-wide, I could go narrow. And I worry that when I go from concept and all these ideas we talk about to something that you could actually buy, a real proposal, again, I've got to take things out of the shopping cart. I've got to close some doors. And what if I close the wrong door? What if I made the wrong decision? We call that a valuation problem. The second one is lack of information. So there's this irony out there where there's so much information for our customers to make their purchase decisions that they fear it's the white paper they didn't read, or it's the Gartner report they didn't review, or the Forrester report, or the person in their LinkedIn network they didn't ask for some advice. And that person would have revealed all the problems, all the pitfalls, and all the stuff I needed to know to be a smart consumer. So it's a lack of information. The third one's outcome uncertainty. Outcome uncertainty is I like to describe it as the gap between the customer's pen and the contract. It is filled with outcome uncertainty, because in the 11th hour, what the customer is really sweating is, I know I predicated a business case to my CFO on getting this kind of return, and what if this doesn't come to pass? Now, in normal times, that might be a loss of face. It might be embarrassment, just not looking good in front of your colleagues, your coworkers, et cetera. In times like we're in right now, that literally could mean losing your job, right? Is making a big decision, wasting your company's money on a big purchase. There's just so much scrutiny right now. So those are the things that customers struggle with. And so we got to figure out a way to get them from, I want this, to I bought this. It's about dealing with those problems.
So let's talk about that for a minute. So we've got the changing buying landscape, and now we have the sort of this macro uncertainty.
Yes.
And so you put the two together. What do we? It is a perfect storm. How do we navigate, and what do salespeople and sales organizations need to be doing differently?
Yeah. So look, I mean, some of the things we've talked about for years now, equipping your salespeople with insights that lead to your solution. We should absolutely keep doing that, because that's what customers expect today. In the Challenger customer, we talked about, look, in this world of, and by the way, I will say, virtual selling has made this consensus buying problem that much worse. There's no downside to the customer sending the Zoom invite for the demo out to everybody in the organization. Now you're building consensus across dozens or maybe hundreds of people. That's a nightmare. So that is a big problem we got to deal with. That is something we got to focus on, finding that stakeholder. We call them mobilizers, right? Who is your twin on the customer side that can get us to do more? And then this, this problem of no decision is going to get worse. These things I was talking about before, I don't know what to pick. I haven't done enough research. This is a big risky decision. Do I have enough certainty that this is going to all work out? Those things are driven, those are genies that can't be put back in the bottle. All vendors are offering more options to their customers. That drives up the concern that I might pick the wrong thing. There's going to be more research tomorrow about your space, your market, your competitors than there is today. It's just going up and up and up, which increases the customer's concern that I didn't read the one white paper that's going to have all the answers. And we're all trying to move up the value chain, go from selling simple products on a transactional basis to solutions that are sticky and embedded and expensive and, by the way, risky and disruptive for your customers. That dials up that outcome uncertainty. So those things are on a path to become worse over time. But I would also say that the downturn is going to create a huge spike in this problem, right? So, but downturn aside, this stuff is not going away, and it's likely to get worse because it's driven by systemic factors beyond any of our control. So.
Great. Well, Matt, thank you so much for sharing these insights with us. We're going to be joined in just a minute by Marilee Bear from Zendesk and Greg Ernst from Intel. Before we get to that, we're going to see a quick case study from Zendesk. So let's cue the video.
The onset of COVID, it really impacted the way that our sellers had to operate. Our real challenge was, how do we, in a virtual selling environment, drive pipeline numbers and increase our ability to get out to different prospects and customers?
LinkedIn Sales Navigator was absolutely key to helping us meet the challenge.
Sales is still very much about human connection and about relationship building. And LinkedIn Sales Navigator is the only data set that allows for us to understand the intricacies of a person's professional career, their interests, their aspirations, to help us really focus on what they care about.
Our results were fantastic. So 6,500 new connections that we made via LinkedIn Sales Navigator. It netted out to 100 qualified meetings, and that helped produce over 100K of MRR in that particular quarter.
All right, we're back with two more amazing guests, Marilee from Zendesk and Greg from Intel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So we'd love to do similar introductions. If you could share a little bit about your role and, of course, something that's not on your LinkedIn profile. And Marilee, I'd love to start with you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Marilee Bear. I am Senior Vice President of Enterprise Sales North America at Zendesk. So I lead a team of about 125 sellers in the enterprise space. And let's see, so something not on my LinkedIn profile is I am a motorsports fan. Oh. I've spent a lot of time on racetracks throughout the country as both a driver and an instructor. And I'm a big, big Formula One fan as well. Lewis Hamilton, Mercedes is my team.
Amazing.
Huh. Can I do mine over?
Yeah, that does help me.
That's really good.
Great. And Greg, how about you?
Big Red Bull fan.
Cool.
Oh, boy.
Last year, Max Verstappen, and now it's boring to cheer for Max, right? Yeah, so Checo's my driver now.
Okay, all right.
No, for Intel, I lead Intel's Americas sales and marketing organization. About half of what Intel makes every year, we actually gets deployed here in the Americas. My sales organization, my marketing organization, we wake up every day really thinking through customer problems and how compute can play a role.
Wonderful.
And thank you. LinkedIn's a huge customer. Salesforce is a huge customer, so thanks.
Great.
Since it's LinkedIn, I'd say first job ever, high school, I worked in a meat department for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. That is not
Joe
still-
O'Malley's. That is not on my profile. Yeah.
Great. Well, I'll share. I didn't share at the top of the show, but something that's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I have a 120-pound puppy named Teddy.
not a puppy.
He's a Bernese Mountain Dog. I promise you, he's a
gosh.
puppy. Wonderful. Well, thanks for being with us. So Matt and I have been talking about the changes in the B2B buying landscape. And before we get into your views on that, I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you think about your sales strategy today in light of some of the things that are happening. So, Mary, tell us a little bit what's going on in your world.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just start with a quick brief on Zendesk. So we are a customer experience platform. So our customer support software and messaging capabilities are used by hundreds of thousands of companies. And for my role, I came in 2 years ago to really help the company drive up market to the enterprise space, which is pretty typical. What I would say about strategy, because that's a very broad category, right? So I'll talk a little bit about the operational piece and our strategy today and how that's really evolved in the last, couple of years and even more so, and then also about the people part. But when I started 2 years ago, we were just coming up upon $1 billion in ARR, which was really exciting for us. And we had gotten there as a product-led growth company with very few tools, probably a little less process. We did that and we were very successful. But we knew that we would need to do things differently if we were going to be successful as we got to 3 and 5 billion in ARR. And of course, during the pandemic, we actually saw a huge surge in inbound leads that came into us. Zendesk's very foundational value proposition around agility and quick time to value really resonated with a lot of customers. And so they used us. So we really kind of lived off of that for a while. And then as that started to taper off, we knew that we had to do things differently with pipeline generation. Mm-hmm. And really what that came down to was being able to build in, process and framework, being very clear in our metrics for success. What does great look like, and putting that out there. And as leaders, being able to clearly articulate what we are looking for from our teams in terms of pipeline generation. It was definitely a change for us to be able to evolve that way. One of the biggest things, as you just saw in the commercial, is LinkedIn Sales Navigator has been a big piece of that because it's really allowed us to be more agile and be able to really educate our sales reps so they feel very confident in having the right conversation that is very, I like to call it bespoke for each customer. Mm-hmm. It's not the same spray and pray methodology that we've seen, for so many years now. Right. That just kind of, has been kind of muscle memory for a lot of sellers. And so that definitely has changed. And from a people perspective, our strategy is really about maintaining a culture around what we call humbledance, which is being humble, but also with a great measure of confidence along with it. And we really strive to portray that in our interactions with our customers, as well as internally. So, from a strategy perspective, it comes down to clarity around the operational metrics and creating accountability with those, and then making sure we maintain that culture that really, made us so special when we were smaller, and maintaining that as we scale.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing it. And Greg, what about at Intel? What are some of the primary ways you're thinking about go-to-market in this environment?
We're doing, I was thinking of it in three swim lanes. People, then the tools and the data that you make available to people. And then the third, which is probably really where you start, is what persona are we targeting, and what is the sales motion that we're asking our marketing and sales leaders to go out with. As far as people, I think we'd all sit here and say we have the best people. We do have the best
We
people.
do. We definitely.
I'll just say
record.
it. I'll say it. But then how do I develop them and how do we develop them? I do think during the pandemic and post-pandemic, there's this mindset for our people. If they're not growing, they're probably going somewhere else, right? And so, which really just reinforced what we always knew as sales leaders. It's why we got into this, which is helping our people grow, teach them new sales plays, teach them new, for us, very technology-driven sales approach. We've acquired a company called Granulate, which has a lot of our customers' interest, where they can use at a software level approach, extract more performance out of their hardware without changing their code. Customers love it, but that's a new sales motion for our sellers and probably a new persona. So that's one focus area. And then on tools and data, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, similar. We started with 100 licenses. We're now at 750. Average deal size has gone up by 18% for our sellers who use it. We've done some in-house tools around AI Sales Navigator, which really is our own custom solution around surveying our customers' websites, surveying what they post on social, what their earnings say, what's in the press, and then help automate some of the sales or some of the conversation recommendations.
Great.
So we put that in place. We've also been a much bigger user of YouTube video. I think it's, Matt, to your theory, I think it's a great sales tool, and it's awesome when our customers come in and they've self-educated. Especially when they've self-educated on the material we've curated,
Right.
that's factual, accurate, fair, right? And so YouTube video has been huge for us. And then on the third, around the personas, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. We're expanding as Intel on persona type, just as customers change the way they're deploying technology. This edge to cloud is a great example. That introduces a lot new personas. Well, then us as sales leaders, we've got to change our sales motion.
Right.
It's LinkedIn, Salesforce. They no longer only deploy their servers in a data center that they fully control. That changes things, right? So those are the three swim lanes.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. And speaking of sales tools and technology, I get asked all the time, what should our sales tech stack look like? It is a crowded space today and getting increasingly so every day. And Forrester came out with a study that said that 53% of sales reps report that the technology they have today doesn't actually help them to be more successful. And yet we continue to invest in all kinds of tools to help. And so I'm curious, Marilee, maybe I'll start with you. How do you think about what the modern tech stack, sales tech stack should look like? And just tell us a little bit about advice you'd have for others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the right tech stack is really hard to prescribe because every company's different based on shape, size, and so forth. But I know what's worked for us. We obviously have our CRM. We have LinkedIn Sales Navigator. We have a conversational intelligence tool, Gong, which has been really, really helpful for us. Specific to our ability to, in this virtual selling environment, be able to really actively coach our sales teams around the conversation and dialogues they're having with their customers, and understanding buying motivation. It's a tool we really, really do love. I think at the end of the day, you really have to think about less is more. Because I know from my perspective as a sales leader, I get so many reach outs from this new tool, and it's, a lot of times they're really small startups. Hey, this founder has this new AI-driven technology. It's gonna make your dreams come true. And, I think that there's a place for that, but I know for us at Zendesk, we're driving towards profitability as a company, and we have to be more discerning about the decisions we make. So the ones that we do bring in, we need to do the following. We need to make sure that it has use case applicability across multiple geos, multiple groups. It's not just a little siloed group buying a new tool, and not bringing some cohesion to the equation, and being able to say, okay, this is what we are going to use. Here's how you should use it. The last thing I want is IT to push out a new tool, and you get your login, and then you're like, I don't know, I haven't opened that thing in forever. Are we still buying? Do we still have that? I have no idea.
Yeah.
So you really have to think about like the value creation that comes with that, and the implementation, and the success criteria. Also, as a sales leader, when you have new tool sets, I find that you have to constantly kind of remind everyone that it's out there, and once it starts to make people's lives easier, then it's like viral, right? It's really easy to get people to consume. I think productivity and efficiency tools, even like Calendly, are really great for scheduling meetings. I mean, back in the day, you would do 5 back and forth with the prospect about the time and that they can meet, and it's like it's such wasted time. So more automation, more efficiency, anything that can help our sellers get out of like the admin part of their role and into the things that matter, like the research, the active listening, those things, the dialogues. That's what I look for.
Okay, great. Well, let's spend a minute on this topic, because we recently published some research that showed that the best performers actually, and counterintuitively, spend 10% less time selling than everyone else. And what we're seeing is a pretty big divide between the habits and the behaviors of top sellers versus the average sellers. And what we've seen is that bad data coupled with technology to enable behaviors actually can be a real hindrance to average performers. But top performers have figured out how to get the data they need, and they're combining it with really good habits, and they're seeing completely different outcomes, even though they might actually be spending less time selling as we think about it. And so I'm curious, we talked a little bit earlier about, what we're seeing in the changing landscape, and we believe that this idea of deep sales, which is this idea of the data plus good habits, enabling a deeper connection and more personalized engagement, is absolutely where we need to be playing today. And I'm curious how, maybe if you each could take give us your take on how you think about the deep versus maybe more contrast a shallow approach today. And Matt, do you want to start us out?
Yeah, I love this concept of shallow selling versus deep selling. Like LinkedIn shared this with me a few weeks ago, as you know, maybe a month ago, and I was blown away. I mean, I think it's a resonant concept, and it really describes, I think, this chasm between what the best are doing and what most of us do. And unfortunately, there is a lot of shallow selling out there. I use maybe some examples from the new book, The Jolt Effect. So Jolt is an acronym. It's 4 behaviors: judging the level of indecision, offering your recommendation, limiting the exploration, and taking risk off the table. Now, if I were to think about, the difference between shallow and deep on some of those dimensions, let's just take judging the level of indecision. There's an old adage in sales, I think many folks know this, which is like bestsellers don't chase garbage trucks. We know that, right? They don't throw good time after bad. They're very discerning. They know time is a scarce resource, and the scarcest resource, and they're really thoughtful about the opportunities they pursue and where they devote their time. And so one of the things we didn't fully understand is that most salespeople will qualify, disqualify, forecast, and then figure out their playbook based on the customer's, if you will, ability to buy, right? So the stuff you can read about on the internet, right? The size of the company, their growth rate, like M&A activity, what's going on in the competitive landscape, et cetera. Have you done the Challenger thing? Do you have a mobilizer? All that stuff. It's all important. But what best salespeople do, the deeper approach, so that I wouldn't describe that necessarily as shallow, because you should do that stuff, but shallow is probably not chasing garbage trucks, right? But best salespeople do more than that. They go very, very deep on their qualification, their forecasting. They qualify not just on the ability to buy, but also on the ability to decide. So they're trying to look at, for sources of indecision. The way they're doing that is through a combination of active listening, of course, but also using a technique we call pings and echoes. So how do I get you, indecision is it's a personal fear, right? How do I get you as a customer to articulate what you're worried about? How do I get it on the table so we can do something about it and have a conversation about it and manage it and overcome it ultimately? So I need to send out the message and then wait for the reflection or the echo back from you. So that is a much deeper approach. Now, of course, the shallow approach, as I mentioned before, is I just if the customer hasn't said no, then hope springs eternal, and they might say yes, and I'll just keep pursuing them. I'll give you a really, really, really tactical example here. So when we interviewed high performers, what they told us was there's a big all customers unfortunately procrastinate. It's a reality in selling. We know this. They have day jobs, and their day job is not to buy our stuff. Right. And so they all will reschedule the Zoom call that was supposed to be on Monday for Wednesday, or they'll kick the can down the road a little bit. But high performers said there's a big difference between a customer who procrastinates and one who engages in what psychologists call decision avoidance. That's the customer who says, you know what, Alyssa? Priorities are shifting here. We're still really interested in LinkedIn Sales Solutions, but you know what? Let's pick this up next quarter. Or you know what? Better yet, next year. For an average performer, that's like, awesome. You know, they didn't say no. They're still in the pipeline. I'm still going to spend time with them. For a high performer, it's like they are out or are way back on the back burner, right? I'm not going to waste time because they may not even know they're doing it, but what they're doing is engaging in decision avoidance. Procrastinators still seek to ultimately make a decision. Decision avoiders are trying to avoid making a decision. And so that's a really dangerous trap. But being a deep seller requires that you think more critically about what's holding this customer up. What are they struggling with, and how do I assess that and then do something about it?
Great. Great perspective there. So thank you for that. Marilee, you talked about some of the technology that you are providing to your teams to enable them, some of the expectations and clarity around the behaviors you'd like them to exhibit. So how do you think about the deep versus shallow approaches at Zendesk and how you want your team to show up on the market?
Yeah, well, of course, I love the whole concept of deep selling. I think it resonates so much today in today's market. And, you know, the thing that I think about is, you mentioned consensus buying.
Yeah.
And that is one of the major things we're seeing. And I'm sure Greg is as well, probably to some degree. I think, you know, one of the things that I'm looking for from my team is an ability to almost be like a coordinator internally within our customers, so within their accounts. They've got to be able to stop assuming that all of the customers, the different groups and individuals who compose the buying committee are talking to each other. I don't know how many times I've seen reps say, you know what, these people were not even talking to each other at all. We brought them together on in a meeting. We built some, you know, commonality, and now we've got the sales cycle back on track. So I think the consensus buying piece is really an area that we have to focus more on, and you know, we need to go deeper there.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. And Greg, anything from your team?
I think a couple I would add, and as I read through some of the Jolt book and made me think of it, one of the things that big part of our sales motion too is the pulling together of the partners who can help deploy. Because we find a lot of the technology solutions, companies today just don't have the skills themselves to do it implement on their own. So one of the things around going deep is build that ecosystem, build that partner, and go in together. And then we find that benefits too. Like, one, it accelerates the company's thinking of how to run the project. Two, there is a little bit of a, hey, two smart companies are both recommending the same solution. Builds their confidence that this will work. So that's a large one for us that we would add to go deeper.
Great. So I'm going to take us home with two last questions. You know, we're talking a lot about how individual salespeople need to adapt, adjust, how to bring more of a deep sales mindset to their customers. I'd be curious to get your take on how do we shift the performance curve of an entire commercial organization, not just the individuals, but how do you start to create entire organizations that are performing at the next level? Curious if you have any thoughts there. I'm
a sales researcher, and so I'm going to look to the experts. However, here's what I would say, just based on the research, is I don't think there are any shortcuts. And I know that's a little bit, it probably feels obvious, I think, to folks who are attending the live stream. But what I mean by that is that I find a lot of sales leaders go from, they try to jump over the sales manager, train my reps on something new, give them a new tool, and suddenly things will be fine. But there's an absolutely critical role that the sales manager plays as coach. And whether you're talking about using a new technology like LinkedIn Sales Solutions, whether you're talking about a new behavior, like let's think about dialing down the FOMO, not just dialing up the FOMO. Let's think about challenging, whatever it is, finding our mobilizer. It doesn't really matter. What'll happen is the sales leader will bring in somebody to train, or they'll buy this technology, and salespeople will try it because that's what they want to do, right? And when it doesn't work, they will go right back to what they were doing before. Right. And none of this stuff sticks. The sales manager plays an absolutely critical role to get this stuff to stick. And I think the problem is that most sales managers, unfortunately, are really bad at coaching. And it's not because they can't be great coaches, it's because they confuse spreadsheet coaching or performance management, deal inspection, with behavioral coaching, which is about how do I help develop the behaviors that will lead to your success as a salesperson.
Yeah.
It's in some respects deal agnostic. We create safe zones of practice. It's really hard, right? It's hard work. And the other problem we have, I think, is a lot of managers are folks who are former high-performing individual contributors who saw their only path forward in the organization because they want to advance their careers is to become a manager. And those skills that made us a great IC sometimes don't translate into becoming a leader of people and a developer of people. And so I think, again, unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot of shortcuts here. It's hard. It's really hard. But that's from the research. I'd say, what do the practitioners say about this? So.
You want me to go?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of best practice sharing and role playing to some degree. I know one thing we've kind of gotten away from at Zendesk is getting a little uncomfortable. I think getting uncomfortable in the coaching strategy, like being able to deliver a story around Zendesk, being able to role play with a manager around, what are you going to hear from a customer? What are they going to ask? What are some objections? And being able to actively listen to those and then be able to have an ongoing dialogue where you don't have the deer in the headlights look like, I don't know, they just said this, where do I go from here? In terms of best practice sharing, this past year, we promoted quite a few people from within, high-performing salespeople, sales individual contributors who are now frontline managers. And one of the things that we're doing is starting to do some best practice sharing and cross-pollination across geo. So we have a West manager who's working with an East manager around some of the things that they're doing. I've identified certain managers who have varying skill sets, some that are really great at big deal architecture, some are better at prospecting, and propping them up, giving them a voice and ability to help teach others. I think, no offense to people who do trainings and, our enablement team, but I think that there is a lot of value in salespeople hearing from their peers about what's working and how did you do that? That's great you got that result, but how did you get there? Right. What was said? What did you do when this happened? And being able to share that just helps make people better, and that raises the whole team.
Harnessing the wisdom of the network and of the team. I like that a lot. It's cool.
Yeah. So two themes here. So one is around sharing great ideas, especially maybe in an environment where we're not able to sit next to each other and observe in the same way. And then the second around this idea of skills development is really critical, it sounds like.
Can I throw one other idea out there? So I think sometimes big changes really, again, they're tough, right? And especially when those skills force our salespeople to do something really different, and maybe something they're uncomfortable with. One of the really tactical practices that was shared with us years ago, this is a company that rolled out Challenger, and they found sometimes for those relationship builder or hard worker salespeople, creating tension and purposefully creating tension with your customers is a hard thing to get used to, right, and get comfortable with. And so what they did, again, very tactical, was they created these safe zones of practice. Quite literally what they meant was, try it with a customer who's gone dark with you, who does not respond to you anymore, who said no. What do you got to lose, right? And when you experience some success there, it's like, oh, now I might take it on this happy prospect or customer and try it there.
Okay, I like that, safe zones. Great. And Greg, what about you?
Just a few to add. I would say, because what we're talking about through is how do we create a high performance mindset in our organizations. And so one, I do on the people side, you have to realize the sources of motivation of human beings.
Right.
Some people are motivated by being the best and a mastery of a skill. They want to be the best. A lot of sellers are. That's why they go in, because it's very measurable. So you got to, every time you talk to your organization, every time you structure or compensate, right, let's think about that persona type. And then the second, some people, they really inspired by autonomy. That, hey, you know what? I own my own business. I'm the CEO of my territory. So then the way you set up the structure, the way you set up your territories, the way you either allow people to share on deals or don't share on deals would be another one. And then the other one is really a sense of purpose. And the sellers have to know the technology they're delivering creates a better outcome for their customers, better outcome, if you can, type to the world, the technology, but it's got to be literal. And so I think that's one, is like, as sales leaders, as you talk to your people, realize you're going to have people of all three persona types in your org. And as you put together the compensation framework, the sales methodology framework. You want to play to all three. So I'd say that's a big one. And then the third, which I really liked what you said, Marilee, is we got to learn from the losses. And everyone says that, but you really have to unpack the losses. You really have to get people together and be like, that did not work. That was a disaster. And those are probably the better ones. And just to kind of unpack it and then why. And then the whole company needs to lean in from the product management, the product features, the sales team, and then go out there and learn. So I think those are two things from how to create a performance mindset organization.
This is the difference
in
between
addition.
deep and shallow sales leadership too, is what these guys are talking about. I mean, it's fascinating. Like what you're saying, there's this adage out there that like all salespeople are coin operated, and what you're talking about is no.
I don't think so.
They seek autonomy, mastery, purpose, and, and you've got to appeal to those different motivators.
Most I would say, are overachievers in life. They do want to be the best. And
not sales researchers, we're different.
Sales researchers, but you measure yourself. How many books did you sell, right? How many people are? It's all. But I do think, and now to your point, that's not coin operated, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes me very uncomfortable if someone ever says a sales organ is coin operated.
Right.
I just don't think that's true.
It's old school,
Well, one thing that I'll share, I think as we've been thinking about deep sales and what it takes to shift the performance curve in an entire organization, it really is, I think, to your point, identifying and codifying what the best reps and behaviors are, and then figuring out how to enable that process in an easy way, because everyone has a different, they come in and they start their day differently, they spend their time differently, but how can you provide some consistency and enablement and the right tools and data to help everyone perform more like the best performers? And I love, of course, the motivations and all of the people elements that come with this. So let me take us home with our last question, which is a bit more forward-looking. So what is the advice, or what do you think that revenue leaders need to be thinking about today that they may not be spending enough time on? And Greg, if it's okay, I'm going to start with you.
That's good, because I got to think
Give you time.
I know.
I do. To me, and Matt, it plays off you. It's you do have to really constantly think around how you're getting information to your customer set, who your persona type is, who your audience is, what information's loaded. You can't just what you put on YouTube video, what you put on LinkedIn, what you put on your own website. Intel has 20 million visitors every month. Well, they're coming to Intel for something, right? And so being part of that journey with the marketing team, with the team that owns the website, it does create better outcomes.
Right.
And I love it at Intel. Now we've combined the regional marketing with the regional sales, and so now we are one team that thinks through that. And it does increase the sales velocity. It does reduce the number of days per opportunity to close. So.
Wonderful.
I think as a CRO or sales leader, if you're committed to deep selling, which I think most people would say they are, then you really have to think about the people aspect. And the people aspect is around, do I have the right team today? Do they have the growth mindset? Do these people want to do better? Because there has to be a desire to do things differently and grow and improve. And, if not, like, how do you get them there? Or, what if they don't want to go there? What is that? And then thinking about, as you scale your organization, we're going into the new calendar year for a lot of companies. They're looking to scale. They're looking to, thinking about the overall organizational aspect of their business. How do you recruit, enable, and retain the right people who demonstrate those behaviors, or who are very much willing to try and learn? How do you do that? So I think, I'm considering with my enablement partners, how do we do that? And how do we get ready for that so we have the right people on the bus?
Great. So for you, it's all about, revenue leaders need to be thinking about talent.
Talent.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of ways to re-articulate what Marilee and Greg said, but with different words. So it's awesome perspective. Just to my thought here would be, I've always believed, and if you look at any of the research we've done, the great selling is not just an individual skill, it's an organizational capability, right? And what I mean by that, so think about Challenger, for instance. If you don't have anything insightful to share, you're not challenging, you're just annoying. And actually, so you need the organization to produce those insights, right? And equip salespeople to help tell those stories, to use them to challenge customer thinking. Think about Jolt, like, you know, these ideas, offering recommendations. Well, you know what? Products should be at the table helping us figure out what are the configurations, what are the packages that customers of in different verticals or different profiles get the most value out of, so that our salespeople can recommend those. Limiting the exploration, Greg's talking about, like, are we present where they're learning? Are we putting content out there that helps shape their mental model, right? For the better, so that when they show up, they're well informed with the right information, and they don't feel like they need to spin their wheels and end up in analysis paralysis, taking risk off the table. That is a clear role for finance. Like, think about all the things we could do to de-risk a deal. The last thing we want is salespeople asking finance for permission every single time. Let's figure out the tools that we can just put in their bags and they can use on every deal, right? So a clear role for the organization.
I love that. I think it's so important to understand that this can't all rest on the shoulders of the salespeople. It has to be the capabilities that we're providing to enable and help move customers from indecision to an easier decision. So that's great. Well, Greg, Marilee, Matt, thank you so much for an incredibly insightful conversation. And we're going to leave it there today with those wonderful pieces of wisdom. And it's been an incredibly enlightening discussion. And we thank you all for dialing in from all over the world to join us. And I just want to say, I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope you've gotten a few useful takeaways to bring back to your team, some things to think about for the future. And remember that a recording of this session will be available on demand on our LinkedIn page soon. And you scan the QR code that you'll see shortly to learn all about deep sales. So from all of us here at LinkedIn Sales Solutions, thank you once again. Goodbye for now. Take care, everyone.
Awesome.